Hello, and welcome back to our podcast, Flower Farming in New Zealand, where we dig into the detail of growing beautiful blooms here in Aotearoa. I'm your host, Jo Robinson, a flower farmer, a flower lover, and a creator of floral works. I'm keen to encourage the growing, buying, selling, and the use of our gorgeous local and seasonal flowers. This season, the podcast is brought to you by United Flower Growers, or as it's known in the trade, UFG. Talk to UFG today about buying or selling your flowers through their organisation. Today, my guest is Peter Brown, the CEO of United Flower Growers, or UFG. Welcome, Pete. It's great to have you here today to chat about UFG and how it aims to help both florists and flower farmers in New Zealand.
Good morning, Jo. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So can you introduce yourself and tell us who and what UFG is?
Yeah, I can. So I'm Pete Brown and I'm the Chief Executive of United Flower Growers, and it's sort of known as UFG in the New Zealand market. So we are New Zealand's biggest wholesaler of flowers, and our core business is auction services, which is delivered to people right throughout New Zealand using the latest technology. And actually, in fact, they can access it from anywhere in the world.
In the world?
Yeah, in the world. We've had people buying from on holiday in Dubai before.
That's pretty cool. Does UFG have a mission statement that says what they aim?
Absolutely. Look, our mission is to provide a fair, effective, efficient marketplace that leverages really user-friendly technology.
That's quite a mouthful, isn't it? Okay, I'm thinking through all of those. There's a lot of parts to that statement, not just the fairness, but the supply to all and the technologies. Yeah, we'll get into this as we go along because there's a lot in that statement. So who does UFG mainly supply? Are you aiming as your target market event organisers, florists, supermarkets?
Look, florists are pretty core to our business. They would be front and centre, florists and wholesalers of flowers. But over the years, that marketplace has extended, particularly as I think, working parents don't really have the same time to maintain an urban garden the way they once used to. So supermarket flowers have taken its place. So as well as those florists and wholesalers, which are core to our business, we're also supplying supermarkets. We supply a lot of dairy owners now, cafes, bookshops, anyone who would like to sell flowers, we're able to service. And I guess that's when we went back to our mission statement. That's why we're a fair marketplace, because any buyer can have access to our products.
Okay, excellent. In our conversation that we had last week, you said that you're proud of the way that UFG connects to those in the industry. Can you just explain to me what you mean by that?
Well, no grower is too small, nor is a buyer too small. So when we talk about buyers, we're talking about businesses. So to have an account with UFG, which is the most effective way to buy flowers, you do need to be a business selling flowers to the public. So we don't sell directly to the end user.
Okay, got you.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So in the world of flowers, how does UFG define its position as a business?
We're in our third year of our transformational program, third and final year. And we've been under the hood of the business, fine-tuning our technology. And the way that we can connect with New Zealanders is in their living rooms. It's not getting them to come to an auction at 5 a.m. in the morning anymore. That in-person service it's not in demand anymore. And for us to get the best geographical spread, we need to leverage technology to do that. So as a company, I'd like to say, because about 75% of our business is auction services, I say to a lot of people, well, look, UFG, definitely in its auction business, we don't really sell flowers anymore. We offer a technology platform that connects growers to buyers, and we're very, very similar to a trade meet platform.
That's a very interesting way of thinking of it, that you're the logistics side of a grower getting to a buyer.
That is what we do. I mean, it's not our job to tell the market, how they should be growing or what they should be growing or when they should be growing. We're here to provide a marketplace that's fair, that connects all growers to all buyers. And it's fair because we don't restrict those that can use that platform. It's really important that all growers in New Zealand supply the platform, because it means that everybody can access it. If somebody was to do a direct deal, for instance, it takes that product away from a lot of mum and dad businesses in New Zealand. So, the fairest marketplace is our one. And that's what we're really proud of, Joe. And I actually think that that message probably hasn't resonated enough around New Zealand, that UFG connects growers to buyers. And if you're a grower of flowers, that's difficult enough. You don't necessarily want to run a website. You don't necessarily want to have to collect debts. You can put that product listed on our platform. And we take care of everything else.
And you've really almost answered my next question as well, because I was going to ask you whether you consider that your buyer-grower network is extensive enough to give buyers and sellers confidence in UFG. But you've basically said that you're there as the platform for them to connect, and you are a large part of the New Zealand flower market.
Yeah, just to give you some data around that, we're selling to approximately 500 buyers in New Zealand. Now, some of those buyers will buy every day. Some of those buyers might only buy a couple of times a year, but we've got 500 unique buyers that have transacted with us in the last 12 months. Interestingly enough, and this is an interesting stat, we've actually got 350 growers that have supplied us, unique growers that have supplied us in the last 12 months. Now, I would say of those 350 growers, 100 of them are on a regular basis, or a reasonably regular basis, and would be known brands to our buyer network. So by New Zealand standards, that might not sound like a huge number to some corporates, but by New Zealand standards, 500 people in New Zealand who are selling flowers is quite a big number. So our reach is huge.
And from a grower's point of view, knowing that 350 are selling to you, it just shows that you do have a very extensive network.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. And we want to protect that, right? And that's why we've invested so much in the technology in the last 3 years, because we could see the appetite of the market moving. We could see that new generation of florists coming in that, had family commitments in the morning, may not have been able to get up early to buy their flowers, couldn't come in person. So we knew that in order to protect this business for the next generation, that we had to move with the times, and we had to do it really, really fast. So that's what I've sort of spent the last 3 years doing, is making sure that we can catch up to what the market wants and desires, and over the last
and needs,
and look, over the last 12 months, and this might not sound like big numbers, but it is a recession. We've grown the buyers on our platform by about 7%. So that's good news in a market where actually there's probably been a lot of florists that have had to close, or maybe move their businesses home.
And growth is growth. You don't turn down growth.
Absolutely, not in this market.
I know that you have auctions 3 times a week in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, but you also have a wholesale branch. But I believe that you've got some new innovations in your trading system as well. Do you want to explain them a bit more for those who currently don't buy or sell with UFG?
So from a buyer's standpoint, they used to come to the floor and they would have to log in at 5 a.m. from wherever they are in New Zealand or in the world, and they would purchase this. Now, we have those auction houses spread throughout New Zealand because it gets us closer to that end business that needs our flowers. Obviously, keeps transport costs low, carbon footprint, all those things are important to us. So we have those auction houses. 6 a.m. starts a little bit later in Wellington and Christchurch because they've got less product to sell. And probably not some of the same traffic issues that we experience in Auckland. So we like to get going a little bit earlier in Auckland. But the problem we have with that is you still have to be there at 5 a.m. So, a few years back, they decided that they would introduce the future bid. And what the future bid does is, again, it's a bit like Trade Me. You put a bid in and you disappear. And if you win it, you win it. You don't, you don't. Now, the problem with the future bid is, although it worked really, really well for those spec buyers, those buyers who said, I will put those flowers out in front of my shop if they cost X. If they cost more than that, my customers won't buy them. So that suits them, who doesn't have to secure that product. But it doesn't suit those people who also can't make the auction but have to secure that product. So just this week,
event designers and people like that who need a very particular product on a particular day.
Absolutely. So those that need to know the price that they're paying, and they need to know they've secured it. So, and we've only released this functionality this week, and you're the first person I've spoken to about publicly, but we've announced it to our buyers, that at 7 o'clock the night before the auction opens up, you used to be able to put a future bid in right up until the auction started. Now you can have a buy now functionality, which again is just like Trade Me. You can go on, buy now, you can put a future bid in, or you can actually wait for the auction. So we've just increased that functionality. So for someone who might have to get their children to school in the morning and can't make auction, It's another service to them, and it means that we can open our services out to the wider New Zealand regions in a much bigger way as well. So it's a cool new piece of functionality that people are already starting to use and quite like. So let's see how it goes. And it's actually, I think it's going to be quite engaging for growers too, because growers are now they set the price. So they're having to say, righto, what do I think I'll get on the floor? Or am I happy at that price? Or is there a premium for securing that product? It's totally up to them, right? It's their product. So they're now having to actually get deep in, well, what does my product sell for, right? And they're getting a little bit more involved in their own returns, which is important.
People need to be aware of their costs so they can set their price, so they get a fair and sustainable price for their product in the end.
Yeah, and to know roughly what your product sells for in the different months throughout the year is important as well, because you know how much investment you might want to put into stretching your season out. Heating might not be economic for some. Obviously, those bigger growers that heat during the winter can get quite good prices, but they have quite big input costs.
Yes.
But maybe you can put them in a glass house and stretch that season out a month or two, benefit from those better prices. And in terms of our wholesale network, our auction's obviously available 3 days a week. It's available from 7 o'clock the night before in terms of making those pre-purchases. But, what about those people that need something in between times? What about those people that have got a wedding coming up in 2-3 months, right? And they need 160 centimetre white roses and they must have them and they must square that price away. So we need our customers to leave happy. So we offer that service too. Right, so we've got a wholesaler based in every single auction branch. And also those people that might miss out on the auction floor and think, I didn't get enough of that. They've got the opportunity to go into our wholesaler and pay a fixed price for that product. Now, naturally, wholesalers around the New Zealand, we're not the only one. They do come at a higher margin. So, obviously auction's great because it's fresher, faster, cheaper, because there's less middlemen clipping the ticket. It's still a great return to growers, but it's cheaper for the end user. But for those little bits and pieces, those wholesalers are really, really important for that as well. And also we've got a wholesaler all the way down in Invercargill. And what's strategic about that is they can get same day into Dunedin, Queenstown, Taonao, and those sorts of places. So it just gives us that reach. And it means that, we can service 90% of New Zealand, well, not probably 95% of New Zealand within 24 hours.
That's pretty impressive, really. And I'll ask you more about the logistics of supplying that in a minute. Just because we're talking about this, what do you think some growers see as the biggest barrier to sending their product to auction?
Well, geographical location plays a part, and the size of the growing operation can play a part. There are sort of freight challenges. So growers will sometimes say, look, the cost of the freight's not worth me sending it to auction. And look, I think what I'd always sort of push back is, well, look, is there anyone growing product in your area that you can get together with and collectively work with, like a mini co-op, if you like, where it's like, okay, well, let's together commit to a certain volume. We might grow something different. Hey, maybe we even sell under the same brand. Maybe there's 3 or 4 small growers who are like, let's form a brand together. We all grow different stuff. Maybe we grow the same stuff. And we can provide that continuity of supply. We can get lower commission rates because we're providing higher volumes. And let's give it a go. So look, I think they are barriers, but they are barriers that can be overcome. And I think you can change your business and the way it operates in order to service some of those freight links. And look, a lot of people think that maybe it takes too long, but look, flowers are pretty resilient. And I think, those people that import a lot of product in wintertime, for instance, some of that product's been out of water for over a week. So they are more resilient than you think. And of course, all of our auction houses have chillers. They all go in water. They're all restored to their full life before getting there. So look, I don't think it needs to be a barrier, but sometimes that's a barrier. And I feel like there's the odd grower that might put stuff on the floor, not get the price that they want. And then they think, okay, well, cool, it's not worth it. But we know that just like any brand, you have to have a presence for a long period of time. You have to persevere, and you have to see the seasons through, and you have to have the good times and the bad times, and the high prices and the low prices. And as long as that balances out, which I'm pretty confident it does, then you're going to have a pretty good business model.
And you have to have consistency of quality and volume so that the buyers get to know you and to understand your business as well and appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, you can send second grade product to auction, but you must mark it as second grade. So, and that's always a challenge for us to make sure that we are giving the buyers the best product, best quality we can. And that we're not always going back for credits. There are
Yes.
grading standards that we make available to growers that we like them to adhere to ensure that when a buyer's buying a product, that they're getting the consistency that they would expect for that price. Now, what's also worth mentioning is that all of the product coming into our warehouse is photographed. So as a buyer on our platform, they're not seeing some stock photograph that's been photoshopped of your product that was grown a year ago as a grower. They're seeing that product as it comes in on that day. So they can make a reasonable decision on that. So, that helps as well.
I think that it's really interesting you start talking about standards, because I think that's one of the biggest barriers. I don't know that a lot of growers understand the standards and know how to find those out. Does your sales team offer guidance and support for growers as they set up systems?
Yeah, look, if a new grower wants to set up an account with us, they will receive the white glove treatment. And it starts with just a simple email. It's admin@ufg.co.nz, so just ADIM@ufg.co.nz. From there, there's an actual person at the other end of that email, and it's not a chat bot, and they'll put your query in the right place. So, for instance, if you're a South Island grower, you're probably best placed to talk to Simon Hunter, our auction manager down there. If you're a Lower North Island grower, you're best to talk to Wilfred Geeling, our auction manager there. And of course, if you're in Auckland, you'll talk to Lynette Rushton, who does Upper North Island. And all of those auction managers will talk you through the process. They'll explain the standards to you. There's a standard, for every flower that's provided to us, I believe there's a standard. So yeah, you get that white glove treatment. We'll bring you on board, especially if you're going to commit to supplying that auction over a reasonable period of time.
Is there a way that growers can actually view an auction or visit the auction house? It's just, I'm trying to think, some of the barriers to the growers is possibly just the nervousness of dealing with a large organisation. If they can create that personal contact rather than just an email, is that something that could be set up?
Look, absolutely. So if you're a buyer, for instance, you're invited to an auction training session where you actually see how the auction works and you get the opportunity to practice on that platform. All new growers will get that personal relationship. So the reason there's an email is because it's like, hey, rather than hand you out 3 different phone numbers,
Yes.
let's get your details, where you're growing, what's your based. Like, somebody will connect with you straight away and they'll point you in the right direction, and you'll get that consult with that auction manager who knows what's happening in your market. And then that's not to say you can supply all auction houses if you like, and some growers supply right across the country. So you don't just have to supply in your region, but that's a good starting point. And you will get that personal attention. Now, I'm completely open to growers also at some stage watching a training session on the platform. They might as well see what a buyer experience is, because it's nice for them to be comfortable that we're going out and we're presenting their product in the best possible way to that buyer, or to as many buyers as possible.
And I think that is a really good point, because growers poured their heart and soul and months into growing some of these products to actually have that personal connection. It's just that connection and just feeling that it's more personal, because UFG to growers comes across as a very large business, which has got its advantages. But if you're a smaller grower, I think that's a massive step to move towards auction or wholesale.
Just the other day, 350 growers, although that's a lot, it's not a lot really. Like, you can ring around those in weeks, not months. Every grower who supplies our auction on a regular basis, or even just on a semi-regular basis, has a relationship with a person. Without a doubt. They will have a phone number, they can message them, they can email them. In fact, there's always messages going backwards and forwards on different things too, especially if maybe a grower's got a bit of a disease outbreak and they're explaining why they can't send the volume that they normally would. Maybe there's some things that the buyers have picked up. That information's free-flowing back ways, and that all goes through the auction manager. So they will absolutely have a relationship with that person.
Love that. So within the floral industry, and for a business such as UFG, I'm assuming that you consider there are big advantages in being a large organisation?
There are advantages in the sense that we've just got big reach, right? So we've got Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch and Chicago, and I think I touched on it before that 95% of New Zealand we can probably get to same day, 24 hours at the most. Well, actually, we can probably get everywhere in New Zealand in 24 hours. We can probably get to 90% of New Zealand same day. So we've just got a really, really good geographical spread. We've got, as I mentioned, we've got heaps of growers, heaps of buyers. So yeah, I think we've got that advantage. But we've worked hard to maintain that advantage. And as I said, margins are thin. So it's very hard to put boots on the ground everywhere. A lot of successful florists now are choosing to go away from bricks and mortar and run a website themselves from home as well. So we have been able to connect with New Zealand using great technology. But yeah, we've also got more branches than any other wholesaler or seller of flowers.
Excellent. So many flower farmers also do weddings and events. Do they need a separate buyer's account as well as a seller's account if they're wanting to top up their own production?
Yes, they do, but the process is, again, it's not too dissimilar. There are forms to sign up as a grower and there are forms to sign up as a buyer. And you can imagine some of the differences. Like, for instance, if you're a buyer, you'll need to go through a credit check. There's different administration associated with it, but it's pretty painless. In fact, from what I've seen, generally, we even try to pre-populate some of the forms for them.
So for buyers, because this is something I don't know, so I'm asking you straight out, is there a minimum amount that they must spend in a specific time period to get a wholesale account with you?
Technically, it's about $250, but it's not something we heavily enforce. What I do heavily enforce is businesses. So the general concern is if we made that threshold too low, we'd have somebody coming in and buying $20 worth of flowers for their living room, right? And that's not what we're here to do. You go to a florist or a supermarket to do that.
Yes.
So that's why that threshold exists, but we're able to control it somewhat by just making sure it's businesses that are becoming our customers.
We're here, you and I, talking and trying to encourage people to think about using an auction house. Is there a better time of the year for both buyers and sellers to talk to you about setting up accounts?
We're open 52 weeks of the year. We'll get an account open for you at any time. There's never a bad time. The busy weeks of the year, obviously Christmas week, Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, they're particularly busy trading periods where volume is needed, where you're going to get slightly better prices. Well, when I say slightly, they're quite often a lot better. Maybe you'll find more time as a grower outside of those periods. Maybe that's the time to do your admin and start trialing something like this.
That just makes so much sense. Getting flowers from the farm to your outlets, are UFG able to help organise freight? Because you have got such a network of buyers and sellers, do you have an established network with a freight provider?
We do, and like for someone like yourself, based down in Central Otago, we'd connect you with our auction manager, Simon Hunter, who's based in Christchurch. He happens to be from the logistics industry, so he could certainly consult with you on that. There are definitely difficulties getting to certain parts of New Zealand at the right time. Like I said, once it gets to our warehouse, we can store it quite successfully in chillers and in water.
Yes.
He would work with you, and he would, certainly that consulting piece, that white glove treatment, that personal relationship that we talked about earlier would play its part there. The reason a lot of growers do like to organise their own freight, and buyers are the same, is no one knows the links better often than yourself. Now, if there's very few links, then it's quite difficult. Yeah. So look, like our buyers, for instance, will say sometimes, look, I would rather use New Zealand Post because they drop off at 8:30 in the morning, or I would rather use ASAP, or, there's a number of courier companies out there that they might rather use because that particular driver comes to their particular store at that particular time. They've got a personal relationship with them.
Yes.
So, as a company, we have looked at procuring large relationships, but then we'd only be, like, even if we went with New Zealand Post, they're still only supplying 95% of New Zealand. They're not providing that last 5%. So we're totally open and we're supportive of the buyer or the grower choosing their own transport options and negotiating that pricing. But if they're really, really stuck, absolutely consult with us and we'll see what we can do. Like I said, worst case scenario, it might be coming up with a plan of how do you change your picking production slightly? Can you cozy up with someone down the road and collectively send in the same truck? Maybe at greater volumes you'll get, more purchasing power.
Yeah. So it really comes back again to that personal relationship, which I think is great. So I'm putting you in an awkward spot here, but I'm going to ask the question. When you look at your customers, you have both buyers and sellers. How difficult is it for you to decide who comes first? Because it's really a bit of a chicken and egg scenario, isn't it?
That is a great question, and I'm sure if there's any growers and buyers listening, they'll be pricking their ears up now. Look, they are both important, but I'll be honest, both of them think of themselves as more important, right? The buyers do think of themselves as most important, and the growers definitely think of themselves as more important. And they are equally important. As I said, we run a marketplace. We're not out there telling people what to grow, when to grow, how to grow. We're running a marketplace for them. So logistics, So I think the journey definitely starts with the grower, right? Like if you don't have the product, you don't have anything to sell. But then of course, you do have to service the buyer well. So look, the answer, Joe,
if you don't have a buyer, there's no point growing it, is it? It's just really hard to know how you balance that.
Exactly. You don't have an egg if you don't have a chicken.
Yeah, I like that way of putting it. That's really very good. Okay, so we can't answer the question because it's not answerable, but it's a good way of thinking about it. You can't have an egg if you don't have a chicken. What's one thing you wish more growers knew before they contacted UFG?
Well, I wish they knew just the size of our reach. I wish they knew that they don't need to set up a website, that they don't need to, use endless amounts of energy, making direct sales. They don't have to stress about not collecting money. That's our job. Like a grower's job is to grow flowers. If you want to sell them, you come to us. That's the message we want to send.
The grower should grow the flowers and you'll sell them. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
I was going to say, how do you see the UFG role in supporting the success of flower farmers? But that's actually it. Leaving the flower farmers to grow the flowers and letting you sell them is, in a nutshell, that's the answer.
Absolutely. And by supplying us, it makes it fair, right? It means everybody gets access to your product. And then it's not just going to be an industry that's going to be restricted to the big players.
Which is important to a lot of seasonal growers in particular, that they can get into the marketplace in a fair way.
The great thing about Option, Joe, is that you will sell your product. It comes at a price at certain times of the year, but look, in just about all instances, your product gets sold. I'm sure at the peak of summer, there can sometimes be unsolds that might have to get returned, but in general, you sell your product. Whereas, if you're to provide to a wholesaler and you happen to only be doing that in summertime when they're already overloaded, everybody's growing product, they're probably going to stick to those main brands. Whereas if you've got a relationship with the auction house, you will always have a platform to sell. And in most instances, you'll sell your product and you can, establish a brand over a long period of time. So I'm not going to go out there and say, hey, listen, everybody needs to sell 100% of their product through UFG. That's up to us to prove ourselves, right? And that's why we're investing heavily in providing these new services. But I do think that everybody needs to be putting some product on the floor. It shows them what it's worth out there in the live market, and it gives every New Zealander access to that product. And that is fair. That's fair and equitable.
Excellent. So with all the innovations that have been going on at UFG in the last couple of years, do you have any more new technology coming on board? Or you're going to try and make this latest virtual wholesale work first?
We're in year 3 of the transformational program and it's the final year. So look, I think we've been under the hood. So I kind of explained it to the board the other day. I said, it's like having that Mustang in the garage and it's on blocks and, maybe it doesn't run very well and you've had to pull the motor out and we've changed the tyres and we've polished it up and we've done things like that. And now it's time to drive it down the street, and that's called marketing. In the next year or two, you'll be seeing increased efforts on the marketing front because we've got something that we're really proud of and we want to show it off.
Love that. So if there are growers keen to sell to UFG, their first point of contact should be through your website and look for their local, do you call them floor manager, auction manager, like Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch?
Yeah, correct. Well, there's a lot of work about to happen on our website because we think that it doesn't quite touch on where we are at today. It's quite an outdated website. But that's why I said I think the first point of call is because there is multiple people spread throughout the country that can service you depending on where you are. As I said, that central point I've said is you can go to the website, absolutely, and click on becoming a supplier and it will give you the same information. But it ultimately starts at that email, that admin@ufg.co.nz. Tell us who you are, give us your contact details, and we'll put a phone call in and we'll start the conversation.
And for anyone listening who is worried about that process, I have done it. And I wouldn't hesitate to talk to UFG if you're at all interested. But Pete, we'll just finish off with you having your chance to say, have you got any final advice for flower farmers or florists?
Take the plunge. Take the plunge. Be prepared to invest and learn. It's not going to work if you just jump and do it once. I think you have to, you have to bide your time, get comfortable. The buyers will get to know your product. If it's there on a regular basis, they'll expect it. And also, just to link to your last question too, Joe, like if for some reason you don't feel like you're getting the best customer service from UFG, you can contact me too. I'm always about improving the business. So my email is pbrown@ufg.co.nz. So just P for Peter, brown@ufg.co.nz. We're always open to feedback, and you are going to see a lot of action in the marketing space from us in the next few months. And we'll be starting to do some surveys as well and gather a little bit of information from you to how to improve our services. So look, what advice do I have to growers and buyers? If you haven't heard of us, if you haven't given us a go, love you to give us a shot.
Good advice. Thank you so much, Pete. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I think it's a really difficult thing for smaller growers to get their head around. There is a lot for them to learn, but maybe, as you say, a collective group selling to the auction house as that collective is a great thing to think about. Otherwise, if you're big enough to do it yourself, go for it. Just give it a try.
And I tell you what, one thing growers get their head around very, very quickly, Joe, and they enjoy, is they get paid by us every Friday.
I like that. Thanks, Pete. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
No worries.
Until next time, petals, smile, be happy. Please follow along this season as with the support of UFG, we can bring you flower farming in New Zealand. UFG, New Zealand's largest flower broker. Talk to them today about buying and selling your flowers.